Hello, welcome to a new episode of Talk Turkey.
Hello, Nevşin. Turkey is always full of surprises, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And we are here to talk about a good surprise, I guess, this time.
I mean, good for the opposition, not that good, obviously, for the government. So
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about. After the presidential elections, Turks, especially people who are yearning for a change, were a little bit disappointed actually, because with all this atmosphere, of that the opposition was to win, all these wins for change and everything, they became a little bit hollow because President Erdogan won the elections again. And what was surprising is that he won the elections with nearly 100% inflation. So this time, especially opposition constituents, they were a little disheartened with this election, to be honest. So there wasn't this much of excitement and whatnot. But surprisingly, election night, 31st of March, everybody was a little bit shocked because CHP, the main opposition party, won most of the municipalities in Turkey. When I mean most of the municipalities, look, the biggest cities: Istanbul, Ankara, İzmir, Antalya, Mersin, Adana, Balıkesir, Bursa, the heartlands of industry, where most of the production goes on, are won by CHP. That has been literally a big surprise. I'm doubting if CHP was expecting this much. People were making a lot of jokes, even like most conservative cities like Kastamonu, for example. CHP won Kastamonu after, I think CHP was never empowering Kastamonu ever, for the last 90 years. Or even, I don't know, like cities like Çorum in the Anatolian heartland. So CHP won all these cities. This is a big change. This is a big shift. According to some, this was what was supposed to happen in the 14th of May, actually. This change was to
2023, you
come
mean?
back then, but because of different dynamics, to some, because of the opposition's candidate, Mr. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, this did not happen. So this was awaited, actually. This is what was supposed to happen, according to some. This is the expected result. But according to some, which I mean the government pundits and the government, Mr. Erdogan stated also so, this is just a local election. So the candidates in the local level, they play a big part. If you basically show the right candidates, if you play on them, then you can win. So this does not mean a general election. This is just a local election. So it doesn't mean that AK Party is losing. Some people say that. Some people say, well, this is the change, and after that it's downhill for AK Party. This is how some people comment. I don't know. What's your comment?
I mean, certainly it's a tremendous success for CHP. We need to recognize that fact. I mean, it is the first time largest party since 1977. So that's big. And you said it's majority of the cities, but maybe one more statistics, it would make it even clearer the importance of this victory. Those cities represent actually 62% of Turkey and 73% of Turkey's GDP. So it is really big. And obviously there are other conditions and reasons, maybe also related to AKP's mistakes, but we should recognize the fact that this was, first of all, a success for the CHP, and especially considering also the unfavorable and unjust conditions, because we are still talking about, to a large extent, free elections in Turkey, as we discussed before, but the conditions are definitely not just and fair. As you said, also opposition voters, I mean, they were not extremely motivated. They were actually very disappointed after 2023 elections. So considering all these conditions, and I think it's an incredible success. And what CHP really did for this success, I think that's the point we need to understand. And many people didn't really get that also in Brussels. I think CHP made good use of the political developments, and they positioned their candidates in many cities as the only candidate, only opposition candidate who would succeed against government's candidate. So they really use this sort of alliance with the opposition voters, actually, because we discussed in the last episode that there are no electoral alliances in this one, so there's going to be a challenge. But rather than this alliance, I think CHP did something really good. They really played with this fact that so many people are actually, their main political position is not pro something, but against AKP. And I think they used this very well by positioning those candidates as the ones with the potential to win. So that many opposition voters, they thought that, okay, we need to support CHP so that we get rid of the AKP's candidate sort of strategy. So it is also thanks to, I think, the fact that Turkish voters are actually very experienced. They are experienced voters. Maybe there are major problems in Turkey in terms of democracy, but we still have a long history of democratic experience in elections. And as Turks really like politics, elections and all, I think such a strategy could work because they are also used to this sort of like tactical voting, understanding the dynamics and deciding accordingly. So that was also partially this. And also the candidates, I think they were generally good and competent, of course, apart from a few major mistakes, such as Hatay. And that's why probably CHP also lost there, among other problems, of course, in the city. There are also many women mayors now, mostly from CHP. That's also a very good development. 11 provinces and 64 districts have women mayors now. It's a major change from the previous elections. Of course, it is still not enough, but I think it is certainly a good step in the right direction as well. And one more, probably last but very important point is also, I think, that was a change in CHP. Ekrem İmamoğlu, after 2023 elections, he said something along these lines, that you cannot expect different results by doing the same again and again. So there was a leadership change, and the CHP could also show people that it's a party ready to change and make a different future for itself. I think this message also was perceived well, this message of change, younger people, younger generation. Now we are seeing CHP basically run by Ekrem İmamoğlu and Özgür Özel. They are relatively younger figures in Turkish politics as well. And they are also, I think, doing something much more different because they are not using any polarizing narrative. They are avoiding really direct conflicts, confrontations, tension. And they have positive language to reach out to voters from different backgrounds. And it works because it also shows that when you do the right things, you can change certain dynamics. Maybe the government has been playing this very well, all this polarizing narrative, especially before elections, but you can change this dynamic. So I guess these were the points playing in CHP's favor. But then there are also, I guess, problems at the AKP side because not only CHP won, but AKP lost. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. Actually, AK Party is trying to downplay that. Both AK Party and MHP, I mean, the main two parties of the government, or the governing structure, whatever. So what they say is both Erdogan and Bahçeli said that. Erdogan said, "Wow, first of all, he gave a speech the other day, and he said, "Wow, never forget this is just local elections." And they say basically the turnout is low. Yeah, it's lower than the former elections, around 70 something percent. Usually in
It
Turkey,
is
it's
still
higher
so high compared to Western Europe, by the way.
compared to Western Europe. Yes, but in Turkish standards law, I mean, but guys, that's part of the election theater. That's what elections are, basically. You can ask, well, my voters did not vote, so this doesn't count. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't play out this way. How this plays out is your voters did not turn out because they did not want to vote for you. So that's included. That's included in the calculations. So I mean, it's amazing, actually. I mean, that night, very night, election night, Erdogan came up and he actually congratulated the opposite. Like he said, I congratulate everyone who won the election, whatnot. And he said this shows how strong the democracy in Turkey is, how strong the democratic institutions are. So he kind of wanted to use that because he's being criticized as being a liberal leader, nearly a dictator. But he's used this opportunity to show that he's not a dictator, actually. I am a democratic leader. Well, when the opposition wins, they win. I congratulate them. But then, now what he's trying to do is he's trying to pull his party together. Because, listen, right-wing parties in Turkey are interesting. They have always been person-based, right? Like they are based on person cults. You know that as well. This is the tradition in Turkish right. We have leaders like Demir, Özal, and once they're gone, the parties are gone. And these center right wing parties are strong as long as they win the elections. Unlike CHP, CHP is the founding party of Turkey. They are there no matter what. They sometimes win, they sometimes lose. I remember the times CHP was under the threshold. I mean, but it doesn't. They're still there. The leaders change. The leadership changes. The leading group changes. It doesn't matter. CHP will always be there. This doesn't go like that for right wing parties. Right wing parties are there as long as they win. Once they start losing, they're gone. Like the constituents, CHP constituents are loyal to CHP. If they would vote for CHP no matter what. This does not go for right wing voters. They're like, okay, as long as you win, we're with you. Once you start losing, we look for alternatives. What's interesting this time is like, as you said, CHP start changing their discourse, how they position themselves, and also the candidates in the big cities like Ankara and Istanbul. They are CHP candidates, but they could very easily be centrist political characters. Standard AK Party voters are not timid to vote for these guys. They're not that edgy. They're not that polarizing figures. They're rather bridging figures. This is the new leader of CHP, a younger guy who runs marathons and whatnot, and everybody knows Ekrem İmamoğlu. He totally is a bridging figure. You see that night, 31st of March, he's there with his party, his family. They came out with his family, very looks like a you see very urban family with young kids, blonde wife and everything. They look very quote European, so to say. But Ekrem İmamoğlu, when he needs to, he goes to the mosque, does like a Friday prayer. That like doesn't care. You could see him both drinking his wine and then doing his prayer. Similar with Mansur Yavaş, the Ankara candidate. Özgür Özel is very dynamic, so they're symbolizing the change. I was thinking every 20 years we have the same pattern. So every 20 years we have a party or a group who come to power, and they try to grab on the power because they start thinking if we go, Turkey will collapse. No, Turkey will never collapse. Turkey is a mid-sized power in the Eastern Europe, has a tradition of democracy, with Turkey will always be here. But then people who or the parties who grab onto power, they start being the status quo themselves, and then they're being ousted with a crisis. We're seeing this pattern all the time. AK Party, remember 20 years ago, AK Party was a symbol of change, something new in Turkey, democracy, flourishing, this and that. Now it's vice versa, basically. Mr. Erdogan, what made him? I think he's in the losing trend right now. What makes him lose is he became the status quo himself, and with this presidential system, actually, AK Party does not matter anymore. He is governing Turkey with the bureaucracy. So it's like it's old, it's big, and it's unchangeable. Basically, that's how it looks. That kind of also made him lose, and also candidates. But why those candidates? Because in the AK Party there are no younger, dynamic figures that will just run around in the cities and talk to young people, give them hope, and give them a perspective. It doesn't exist anymore because the party is weakened because of the presidential system and what Erdogan had in his mind. So there is AK Party and Erdogan's palace. Now there is a rift between them, and this does not make Erdogan stronger in the longer term. It made Erdogan and the power structure actually weaker in a sense.
And one thing, I mean, you said about Erdogan recognizing the results and all. It also shows that actually, I mean, the election night, like I received a few calls from European journalists. They were like asking, yeah, this is an incredible victory, but is President Erdogan going to recognize it? Like, what do you mean? So this is also showing the level of understanding or confusion about the system in Turkey. Yes, we are not talking about a Western style democracy here, but we are not talking about like a country like Russia or Belarus either. So there are certain dynamics, certain standards, and you cannot go beyond them. I mean, they did certain things. For example, in the last municipal elections, the Istanbul election was like cancelled the first time. But there are limits to this. Like you cannot really, especially seeing such a big victory for the opposition, you cannot really say that no, I'm not recognizing it. That's certain. And also the second point about claiming that this is just municipal elections, I think there as well there is a problem, because if it was just a municipal election, why President Erdogan was campaigning all around Turkey, especially Istanbul? That was more than actually municipal elections. They really wanted to win, especially Istanbul, but they couldn't succeed. So this also shows that that was a test for the government, that was a test for the president, and they failed. And I think one principal reason also, there's one strong man phenomenon, because when it works perfectly. But then there are also disadvantages of it, because in the party now, there's Erdogan, and then there are others. There's no one else who can be strong, charismatic, young, dynamic, who can be really very, very popular all around Turkey. So that was a challenge, I think, for the AKP, because they couldn't really find those amazing mayor figures. Like none of those candidates were really exciting people. So this was the consequence. But I think when we talk about losers, we need to talk about winners too. And I believe the Istanbul Mayor Imamoglu is definitely the winner of the election, because especially in Istanbul, that was a difficult campaign period. I mean, he didn't only win against the AKP candidate, but he won against the whole government, including President Erdogan. They were all campaigning around Istanbul. They were really doing a lot, actually, to win back Istanbul, because that's obviously very important, and not only symbolically. So, of course, this makes Imamoglu the most popular, probably, political figure in Turkey now, and many people believe that also is going to be the candidate of the opposition in the next presidential elections. Of course, we still have 4 years, and it's a very long time. We'll see. But at the moment, he's definitely the one with the best chance. And he seems to have a lot of popularity as well, because I think the party chair, Rizal, he played a role as well, but they did this together. I mean, I don't think Imamoglu only won the elections in Istanbul, but I think his approach was really important for winning this election all around Turkey as well. So we cannot deny this fact. And he did that by not polarizing, but he did that by really creating a new mood, a positive one, some sort of giving a hope to live together. Because this tension, I think people are really, they have enough with that, but they just didn't know what to do with this. Like, you vote for AKP for 20 years, and it's not that easy. We need to understand that too, like changing that path. So I think he's giving and providing an alternative by showing that CHP is not such an evil party. CHP is not going to ban things. CHP is not going to change their more conservative lifestyle, won't be attacking the most conservative parts of the society. So this is really, really important. And he has been doing this rather successfully, I think, in Istanbul. And that's also probably the success of those mayors in especially big cities. I mean, when we talk about Istanbul in the West, I also wrote this in the Euronews before the elections. People in the West, they just say that, yeah, but Turkey is not just Istanbul. But actually, Turkey is just Istanbul. I mean, it is very representative of Turkey, unlike what people believe in the West, because it is really a melting pot for all cities, regions, cultures, ethnic minorities. I mean, we are talking about a city of 15.6 million. By the way, it is bigger than 20 of 27 EU member states. That's also very important. and 13 million of them, they have their family registries in another city. That means that they are actually coming from an Anatolian background, and all cities from all regions are represented. So in a way, that's also why it is very more than symbolic to win Istanbul, but also it shows a lot that if you can win there, especially in certain municipalities, more conservative ones, then you can win everywhere.
That is true, actually. Yeah, Imamoglu brought this dynamism, I'd say, and he had been a catalyzer for other Anatolian cities also. That's totally a fact, you know. I mean, Erdogan is a political animal. You always say that. Ekrem İmamoğlu is a political animal also. And you know, when we talk about democracies, and as far as I understand, that's also a discussion point in Europe. You know, we talk about institutions, how important institutions are, and this and that. Well, there is that, but there'll always be this leader figure. I understand to at least catalyze the institutions and everything. So even though you have the strongest institutions and the oldest democracy, there'll still be a leader element. I understand, because you know, the opposition tried that in the 14th of May, like the presidential elections. Their idea was like, okay, so we're going to come up with such a good plan. You know, who the candidate will not matter. It always does, because leader symbolizes something, basically. The leader symbolizes maybe a vision, you know, at least. So yeah, leader figure had been important. But then this local elections, the win in this local elections could both be an advantage and disadvantage for the opposition. How? Because Turkey is going through a really big crisis. We still have really high inflation. Erdogan is continuing with the austerity measures with Mehmet Şimşek, the finance minister. Mehmet Şimşek is being trusted by the international investors and international financial institutions. So he's like a guarantor of the existing rational economic policies. And Erdogan states every time that you know, austerity is here to stay. Rational economic policies is here to stay. So it's going to be a really rough 2 years for Turkey. Austerity is going to hurt all of us. It started hurting all of us, basically. It's going to hurt Turkish businesses, especially smaller businesses. So there will be an economic cost. That's why Erdogan does not want to go for early elections, no matter what. He rather wants a constitutional change. And I think rather than a referendum for constitutional change, he's going to want to do that in the parliament without taking it to referendum, because elections or any sort of electoral process means that you know, applying austerity is hard. So he has to escape from that. So
And it's also a major risk. I mean, if he
it's a
loses
major
one
risk.
referendum on top of this local
Exactly. He
election,
does. Exactly. If he loses also. So he does not want that. He's gonna want to cooperate somehow with the opposition to change the constitution. So the opposition has to be really clever this time. They have to play this like a chessboard, basically. And what they need is they need to use these municipalities basically to serve people as good as they can, to apply basically, in a sense, social democratic policies as much as they can to help people go through these austerity measures and tough times. And they could really use this period to build on something bigger for the approaching general elections, I'd say.
yeah. And there are challenges, I think, for both sides. For CHP side, yes, now they're successful. They are the number one party, but they need to show success, especially in the new cities. And under the circumstances, it's also not so easy because they won't be getting a lot of support from the central government. That's clear. So they need to manage this well somehow. But I think challenges are much bigger for the government. I mean, as you said, the economy, I mean, even with the austerity measures, even if you do everything perfect in terms of economy policies, I don't believe that the problem is about economy anyway. I mean, you cannot solve this issue only through economic policies. You need to change certain dynamics, which would need more democracy, more transparency, more predictability, more rule of law. And I cannot see this happening. So as long as they cannot do this, I mean, it's very difficult to change the dynamics in terms of the situation of the economy. And the other problem is, I think, also this entire dilemma of preparing the party and Turkey for the post-Erdogan time. So we don't know if he will rerun again. Normally, constitutionally, is not possible, but he can still try. Also through the snap elections, that can be possible constitutionally. But in any case, maybe one more time, but still Erdogan needs to prepare the party for post-Erdogan time. And we don't really see this, and we cannot really grasp who can do that as successfully as he has been doing. So that's going to be a major challenge, I think, for the future and even for the survival of the AKP, because we see that even now a small Islamist party, they have been really making their job very difficult because, of course, when you try to put yourself as a party which is both central right, both Islamist, both nationalist and all, there are always real versions of those parties. And then an Islamist party, a real one, can say that, no, we are the real Islamist one. And there are quite a few who can say that we are the real nationalist one. So that's going to be a major challenge, especially without Erdogan. I don't know who can really keep AKP as strong as today.
Yeah, no one. I mean, we don't like in AK Party, we don't have such a figure. You know, post Erdogan, it's really hard to foresee post Erdogan AK Party or even. But post Erdogan, if CHP wins, it's easy. There are a lot of figures. There Ekrem İmamoğlu, there is Mansur Yavaş, there is Özgür Özel. You can literally see the cadre that could govern Turkey. In AK Party, it doesn't exist. You know, as I said, you know, AK Party is really insignificant. There are bureaucrats around it, and there are being a bureaucrat is totally different from being a politician. You know, it's really it's their main challenge. Basically, it's like, so to say, Erdogan dug his own grave with this presidential system. He tried to separate his presidential palace from the rest of the politics and started making him weaker in a sense. So what Erdogan is going to try to do is, I think he's going to try to increase his international profile. He's going to Iraq, and you know, he's going to have talks there, and then he's going to go to the United States. He's going to meet with Joe Biden. He'll try to take his backing in some issues. There's going to be huge bargaining going on. Maybe we make another video about these in the forthcoming days. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely on the foreign policy. But I just wanted to say one thing, because
Sure.
for years and years we were saying that, okay, for the government the leader is clear and everything is very clear, but for the opposition we cannot see any alternatives. For, I think, very, very long time we have discussed this in Turkey, and this shows in a way CHP's success, that now we can talk about quite a few alternatives. Like, if Imamoglu doesn't work, there is Mansur Yavaş. If Mansur Yavaş doesn't work, there's Özgür Özel. There are also newly ones coming out, even some of those women mayors, for example, the one in Üsküdar, Sinem Dedetay. So there are many alternative future leaders, and quite young and dynamic as well. They are all in CHP at the moment. So that's also, I think, one of the big advantages. And having said that, I think definitely we should discuss the foreign policy conclusions and consequences of this probably in the next episode.
Let's do that next time.
Sure.
Okay, see you guys.
See you. Bye.